just make sure that the members that are attending remotely can hear and be heard. Members, when I call your name, please answer in the affirmative. Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Ms. Biswas?
Yes.
Attorney Hill?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. It is 7:03 p.m. This open meeting of the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted both remotely and in person, consistent with the executive order extending the modifications to the open meeting law through March 31st, 2025. The information for this meeting can be found on the meeting agenda found on the Town of Grafton website. Please see that meeting agenda for how to participate remotely. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. All participation within this meeting will be visible to others. Please be aware that anything you share on your screen will be recorded and possibly broadcast at a later date. This meeting will feature public comment. For those on the phone, to request acknowledgement to speak, please use the raise hand feature. If you're calling in only, the meeting administrator.
No calling.
No calling? Okay, scratch that. And if you're attending the meeting in person, we'd ask you to step up to the podium when we open this to public comment. And for all speakers, please state your name and address for the record prior to your comments. So for this meeting, I'm going to turn this over to Vice Chair Bill McCusker.
Thank you. So I think to start, did we read the legal notice at the last meeting?
Yes, you read the legal notice, you opened the hearing, and continued it immediately.
Okay, as long as the legal notice has been read, then I think we can turn it over immediately to the applicant. Wait, one quick thing. Looks like, I thought I saw 5 people were connected to the meeting remotely. I'm just kind of curious. Are those,
Dan, Bill Rubidoux, Matali, Bill Yeomans, and then the only other one is an attendee is Anne Marie Foley. That's
okay,
it.
so no, that's it.
That's it.
All right, thank
Yep.
you. Then
And
I'll
and
save
me,
my-
because I have to be up there, so.
Yeah, I'll save my speech about 40Bs. Everyone who's on pretty much understands them. We'll turn it over to the applicant, and he probably have a few things to say, so.
Hi, everybody. This is Chad Boardman and Clay Williams with Eastland Partners here tonight with the guys from Turning Point Engineering, the civil guys. This is project number 2 that was originally submitted, well, actually started about a year and a half ago with the Board of Selectmen with the LIP. So this is LIP number 2, which is called Misco Hills, the reserve at Misco Hills, off of Route 140. What we probably should do is actually start the meeting off similar to the presentation that was really summarized for the people with the Board of Selectmen, and it gives us another opportunity to list out the details and both civil, environmental, parking and open space and trails that are going to the Grafton Land Trust and off-site water and utilities and things. So I think maybe it would be best to, if Mr. Williams is almost ready with his presentation, it goes kind of line by line. It's been previously submitted as well, but it might be nice for anybody in the audience, again, that wasn't here previously, as well as maybe some of the members of the board, just for a recap tonight. And Clay's done a fantastic job kind of outlining some of the details of the project, and if he's ready, I'll turn it over if he has internet access.
Yep. Looks like I need authorization to share screen, and I should be good to go.
You should be able to now. You have it?
Don't see. I don't think so.
Let's see, hold on.
Sorry.
Host and panelist. Hold on. Host and panelists is checked, so you should be able to. Oh,
Is it not letting me?
hold on. I think I have to.
I also have it on a flash drive. If you can just plug it into your computer and run it, if that's easier.
I may have to because I don't have a button for over there.
Okay.
I believe there's not. There's
But if he's on the internet, it shouldn't matter.
huh?
Yeah, I think it's just.
But
got
it's
me
it's
in
the
as a-
screen access, like here, like. No, is it you, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Be
you
able to
should be able to share. And I have you host and panelist. I don't have you in here as a. You're not showing up as a panelist though.
Then that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's signed in through my Eastland email.
Get out and get back in, maybe?
Did you sign in through the email I gave you? The link?
No, I guess it was through the link that was posted on the agenda.
You need your link.
Your link.
You need your link. I emailed you.
Of course. And that's not on this computer because I'm on my personal one. Can I just give you a flash drive to run it?
Sure.
Sorry about this.
Do you want me to eat?
He's under pressure.
That's okay. The first meeting we had here, I messed everything up. So.
All right. Do a great start.
He's done such a great job, he probably really has it memorized.
Yeah, just draw it out for us in your mind.
Yeah, the visuals are a big help, so you know, they're an important part. So yeah, it'll be the Upton Street ZBA presentation.
Do I have to?
So hold on. Let me get back in.
Okay, great.
All right.
All right.
Can everybody on Zoom see that? I guess we'll take that as yes. Okay, so thanks everybody.
Well,
Sorry for the.
Hang on a second. So either Bill or Metallic, could you just let us know that you can see this, or Dan, somebody?
I can see it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I can see it.
All right,
Great.
just want to make sure. All right, thank you.
So as Chad previously mentioned, my name is Clay Williams with Eastland Partners, and this is our presentation for the Reserve at Misco Hills, our rental apartment project at 116 Upton Street here in Grafton. So similarly to how we started off the Pleasant Street project, we're going to kind of run through some of the history, go through some of our abutter outreach and involvement, look at the open space and density of the project, talk about some fiscal benefits, some of the infrastructure benefits. We'll go into the rental rates and the affordability, talk about some of the other benefits to Grafton residents, safe harbor, and then a little bit of our track record here in town. You can go to the next slide, Katrina. So we started off the project.
Is this the next one?
Yep, that's it right there.
Okay.
So we started off the project with the select board during the LIP process. Outside of our select board meetings, we hosted a series of community outreach meetings, both through Zoom and in person, as a way to gather more feedback from our neighbors. We had over 6 hours of face-to-face communication. We attended 5 select board meetings for this project. We feel we did a good job listening to the questions and comments from our neighbors. We are committing to dark sky compliant lighting, which is going to limit visual impacts to abutters. We're going to talk about the utility extensions and the abutter tie-ins we'll provide. And then we also submitted a series of memorandums writing out our responses to the questions and comments we heard to the select board. Go ahead, Katrina. So in terms of open space and density, we'll be donating approximately 1/3 of the project site. Total acreage is 15.8 acres. We'll be dividing the site near the stream in the middle, donating about 5.5 acres either to the town or to the land trust. We'll also include deeded access to the trail system with a few extra parking spots for other Grafton residents who wish to access the trails. We have no wetland resource area impacts. There's no wetland fill associated with this project. Our lot coverage is just over 25%, and our density is 9.6 unit per acre. There are a few other projects in town that are approved and proposed which have significantly higher density. We feel this is a great use of the land. So in terms of some of the civil information, for the total project, we have just over 4 acres of impervious surface, and that includes 6 3-story walk-up apartment buildings and 256 total parking spaces. 236 of those will be surface spots, and we will have a number of garage spaces available for rent as well if anybody wishes to park their car inside. In terms of the bedroom breakdown of the project, we have 46 one-bedroom units, 90 two-bedroom units, and then 16 three-bedroom units for compliance with the state standards. So getting into some of the fiscal benefits of the project that were negotiated with the select board, we'll have a contribution of just over $1 million to the town. $540,000 of that will be going to the general fund. We will be donating $25,000 per building for a total of $150,000. And then we also will be requesting a 50% reduction of sewer fees, which we will then donate back to the town to your general fund. We've got a number of other one-time revenues with the project, approximately $200,000 in building permit fees. We had just over $28,000 in ZBA application fees, and then we'll also be paying $571,000 in water connection fees, which we understand is private and doesn't necessarily go to the town. But it's still investing in a system that a lot of Grafton residents benefit from. Another aspect of fiscal benefits is yearly revenues. I gave a municipal impact analysis presentation to the select board just over a year ago, as Chad had mentioned. And for this project, the town could expect to receive somewhere in the neighborhood of about $360,000 in yearly net positive revenue. And this is expected to go up with increasing property values and property taxes and sewer fees. There will also be some increased funding through safe harbor protections for the school system through the Chapter 78 program. We also have some off-site mitigation proposed. We will need a water and sewer extension. It's about a half-mile running from Pigeon Hill down to the project entrance. It supports the Grafton Water District's goal of eventually extending their main all the way to the Upton line over near Silver Lake. We'll provide tie-ins to abutters along the way. That way people who are on septic could potentially tie into the new sewer line. And then we also have a commitment to traffic mitigation that will be discussed with our traffic engineer at a later meeting. So now we're going to dive into the affordability. I apologize, there's a lot of small numbers here. I think since we have an increased scope of affordability, it's important to mention what the traditional 40B would be. So if we had all 80% units, we would expect somewhere in the neighborhood of about $470,000 a year in savings to people who live at the reserve at Misco Hills. The next slide details the 50% AMI and 60% AMI units. So this means that we are offering lower rents to individuals and families who are making less of the area median income for Worcester County. So with this increased affordability, there's about an extra $100,000 in savings to residents of the reserve at Misco Hills. And those will be in perpetuity, just like every other affordable unit in a 40B would be. There are some other benefits to Grafton families and residents. We will be requesting local preference, which allows individuals who meet one of the 4 following categories, either already living in Grafton, working for a business in Grafton, working for the town of Grafton, or potentially having children who are already in the school system. So there will be an initial lottery run for people who meet one of these categories, and they would get kind of a first chance at our affordable units. As I said, we've got just over $575,000 in yearly savings, and our largest saving is isolated to 3-bedroom units. Through our discussions with the Affordable Housing Trust, that was a really big need in town. There are also safe harbor benefits included with this project. With approval, the safe harbor protection would be extended approximately 2 years via your housing production goals. And it puts Grafton on a path of planned and responsible growth. It kind of keeps you all in the driver's seat. Lastly, I think it's important to mention our previous 40B experience in Grafton with Elm Rock Estates. We had 31 single-family homes. 8 of those were sold to moderate income families. That place has been fully occupied and operating for just over a year now. We feel it's a great asset for the town. So that kind of concludes my history of the project. And I guess at this point, we can either turn it over to the engineers to talk about civil engineering, or if the board has any questions, we'd welcome that.
Any questions from the board right now for Mr. Williams on his presentation, or anyone on?
Do you have to get a curb cut from the state for your driveway or anything like that? Or for the utilities in that section of Upton Street?
Right, so it will be a non-vehicular access permit. So it's not necessarily a curb cut, but there is a DOT permit since we're running a short section of the pipe along Route 140.
Because that is state road.
Correct.
I mean, even the old part. Okay,
Upton Street where the project is accessed?
yeah.
It's not under state jurisdiction, but when we get out to 140, it is, so that will require a DOT permit.
You've talked to them?
Yes.
Because I worked for them for 31 years and we plowed and sanded it the whole time, so.
Yeah.
And they still do. I figured it was still, but it's not under their jurisdiction for
It's
this?
got state highway layouts, which can often be confused as jurisdiction, but when they realigned and redid 140,
Yeah,
it shows up on the highway maps, but the local, we call it Old Upton Street, is not under state jurisdiction. But regardless, we will have to file with DOT for utilities when we get out to 140 and Sibley into.
but not for this section, okay.
Correct.
And sewer. You said you were gonna give sewer to all the abutters, stubs?
Right.
So you're running you're not just running a force main up to,
Yes, it'll be a pump station.
Yeah.
With the force main that will go back up.
but you're gonna have a
Up-
gravity coming down also?
No,
They should be able to tie into the force main. There'll be check valves
yeah, check valves that they could tie in.
that they can
another
tie into.
main.
They'll have to have a low pressure or a pump, individual pump, but they'll have a tie-in to do so.
Does Grafton allow this now? They never used to.
There've been no objection so far.
Oh, and you've mentioned this to them?
They have the plans, and I've spoken to Paul, not specifically about this issue, but about the project.
Oh,
But we can revisit that specifics.
okay. Because they never used to, so
Okay.
we're very backwards
Which
when
part did they not allow previously?
just tying into it. I never heard of anybody tying into a force main.
Oh.
Have you, Jeff? In Grafton?
Not in Grafton.
No, not in Grafton.
I mean, didn't you have a problem with this personally right on Millbury Street, or your brother, or
My
somebody?
brother.
Your brother did.
Yeah, they had to give him a 2-inch line, so if he ever abandons his septic system, he has to pump from there in front of the farmhouse.
Yeah.
There's 3 or 4 lots that have to do that.
Yeah.
But we ran into this with Sotir on Creeper Hill. Remember all those?
Oh, absolutely. You're
We,
right.
we
Yes.
thought all those
Yeah.
people were gonna get sewer, and that's
None of
all
them
they
got-
wanted.
None of them got
And
it.
they never got it.
Yeah. No,
We
you're absolutely
ran
right.
into it on Ferry Street. That's a force main down there, as I remember. And none of those people on Ferry Street got sewer stubs. So that's why I picked up on it.
Great point.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll talk to Paul.
We would have thought they would have loved to do that, especially with all the septic systems over there.
I mean, the one that was, I mean, this was years ago, but Creeper Hill, I mean, those people came, they
No,
they
you're
weren't
absol-
even against the project. They said, okay, are we gonna get a sewer stub?
Yeah,
You're absolutely right.
Bonus, yeah,
They weren't asking to be hooked up, but they just wanted a stub. And
sure.
I think you can still provide it for the future, regardlessly whether the board or the sewer department didn't want it. We could still make the provisions to do it. I think it's a great thing to obviously do, regardlessly whether it's allowed or not allowed. At least the provisions are in the road. Can connect in 10 years from now.
And we haven't gotten into this yet, even on the other development, but, and I know if we can do it in the future, it'll be about this fee thing with the sewer department, because I do have an opinion on that, so.
Yep. Yep. We'll get into it
Yeah, we will.
in both of them.
That's it for now for me.
Mr. Chairman, on that point, Jeff Walsh with Graves Engineering, peer reviewer for the zoning board of appeals. Years ago, it was more common to lay a gravity line alongside the force main just for the purpose of connection and collection in the gravity line rather than the force main. I'm old school, that's my preference, but I have no say in the matter. But I have seen systems that are connections to a force main. The hydraulics have to be taken care of very well. There's some good elevation to climb, so at the lower end of that force main is going to be under quite a bit of pressure, and any ejector systems that tie into that at the lower elevations, they're gonna have to be properly designed and constructed for no leaks, and for enough head developed by the residents along the way to drive the water in the force main up the hill, and not turn on the pump and have it come backwards. Check valve will take care of that, but nevertheless, that's the point.
Any other comments for Mr. Williams from the board? So I actually have one comment, and you may need Katrina to put the presentation back up, but the numbers in, the numbers for rents on your presentation, are those old?
No, those are current.
Because I think there's entirely different numbers in this regulatory agreement in the Appendix A that was included in the application.
Yeah, so those numbers are old. These have the new 2023 incomes that came out
I'm getting it.
in May.
Yeah, May or June.
So, yeah.
Because your numbers are lower.
Right.
The numbers went down.
So the utility concessions increased. The base rents increased, but there was a bigger change in the utility costs. So the net rents actually did go down.
So what's in the regulatory agreement, like for the top left corner, 50% AMI rent, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, you say 865, the regulatory says 1170. That's $300 less.
Yeah, from recollection, the 3-bedroom unit went from $300 to I think $520, because we've seen such grave increases in electricity costs and things like that. So there has been decreases in rents.
Yeah, well, the 3-bedroom units on here is 1462 and it's 952 there. It's $500. So, all right. So those are the right numbers.
Correct.
Okay.
How do the apartments work? It's been so long since it was ever explained to me. I know how houses work. They buy it, the affordable buys it, gets approved, buys it. If they hit the lottery the next day, they can keep the house forever. Does it work that way for an apartment too?
No, so with rentals, there is a monitoring program that happens, post occupancy, where yearly DHC or EOHLC now will review everybody's income and financial statements, and if they do actually breach that income threshold, they would be asked to leave.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
And I thought that it went that way for the for sale houses too, but I was just informed that you're actually correct. That's not how it works.
So who does all that paperwork? Just the tenant and DHCD?
Right. So it's something that is handled through the management company, and then that gets submitted to the EOHLC now. But we pay a monitoring fee, which is about, I think it's $4,000 a year, for their CPAs or whoever it is at the state to kind of go through all that documentation.
So this is like anything else with assisted stuff. Somebody living there under that program, they have to get one heck of an increase in pay to
Disqualified.
Right.
Well, I mean, if they go over that threshold a little bit, they're out, and then they're in.
They lose their job and come back.
Well, no, but I mean, then they can't afford a real apartment. I mean, I shouldn't say a real apartment, but a
Market rate.
market rate.
Yeah.
Nope, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You make a little bit more, such that you cross over 80%, so now
Right.
maybe you're at 90%, or you're at 81% AMI. Chances are you can't afford to live in Grafton.
Yeah.
That was some of the importance of the 50 and 60% AMIs we did, was try to at least get some type of lower established families in town. And if they did go up, they could still stay and be into the 80 pile if they need a little bit more.
Yep, that'll help.
And then if they don't want to move out,
As
it's housing court?
That we don't know. We have a
Yeah.
professional company called Wingate Services that manages all of this stuff, and that's
I mean, I know my question
Yeah.
right now has nothing to do with this
Yeah.
case. I'm just trying to get information on it
Yeah,
in
I'm-
general.
yeah. I'm not too sure what the procedure is to.
We could ask and follow up on that. but yeah.
It's gotta be horrendous
Yeah, probably.
for an owner.
Or occupant. All right.
Yeah, both.
And anyone else have anything for Mr. Williams? Yep. go ahead.
So, as they creep up the AMI, does there have to be a vacancy at the next AMI level for them to be able to remain?
Like if somebody was at 60% AMI and then raised into the 80% category.
Or does their unit then become an 80% unit?
I'm not 100% sure. I can ask the folks at the EOHLC, but
I can't. I think I can answer it. I can't because if there isn't a vacancy, then that means you're going to have because you have to. Right. So you have to provide the right number of 60%ers.
right.
And if there isn't a vacancy at 80,
Right.
then you're either going to be eating the money, and I don't think you're going to do that. So I suspect that you're Brian's right that there has to be an opening.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Interesting. All right, but I mean, it's good information to understand. You know, when we're trying to understand the benefit of these projects for providing affordable housing. I think they're good points. All right, anything else from Mr. Williams? Okay, who's next?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes, Mr. Yeomans.
yes, I just have one point. It was mentioned no wetland impact in the 25-foot no disturb buffer, but they are requesting a waiver. And I'm looking at the notes from the conservation agent. So apparently there is that is being disturbed, and they're asking that it be replicated elsewhere in the project. I just wanted to make note of that.
Okay, is that
Just to clarify, there's no direct wetland alteration. There are proposed alterations in the 25-foot buffer, but there are no wetland directly being altered.
Okay. Thank you.
all right? So, do you have more presentation, or
No, that was it.
do we want to go over the civil engineering part of it, or?
We can do that. I can start off, or if you would like Jeff to review his letter first, or
Do you
whatever
have a
the
letter?
board's decide.
I issued it very late yesterday.
Oh,
Did I get it?
Absolutely.
Tells you how my day's been.
I haven't seen it.
It was at the end of the day yesterday. I didn't expect Katrina to see it till this morning, but.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
this
guess so.
morning
None
was
of us
blowing
have seen it, right?
No, that's on me.
Mr. Chairman, maybe seeing this is the first discussion of the project, maybe it makes more sense for presentation to the board.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not sure what he's even talking about.
They'll be I'm going to be commenting on something they have yet to present to the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after that, if it makes sense, I can speak
pull
to
up
two
the
or
letter, too.
three concerns I have, the major issues that I usually present to the board, without having to go through the whole letter.
Yep. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, on behalf of the applicant, I'm Steve O'Connell from Turning Point Engineering. I'll use my laser pointer, and I'll quickly use this plan as an initial presentation plan, just so I can demonstrate the entire property.
Okay, Steve, I'm just going to interrupt you. So, if Steve's working off the easel, can the folks on the phone, or so you guys can't see it?
So is that what do I have a copy of that and everything you gave me?
Right. Yeah.
That's probably on the webpage, so give me a
Attachment
sec.
But the
C.
camera would pick that up. It does not.
Bill must be able to pick that up.
I don't think. I don't
Yeah, I
think.
think he just said he can't.
Where's it gotta be?
I
I
don't.
don't even think but he'd have to really zoom in on it. Be useful.
Hold on, I think that's part of the presentation of what they submitted, so I may have this. You want me to go down into the plans?
Yeah, I can switch to the plans if,
I mean, you tell me where you want me to go.
yeah, do you have you probably don't have these colored ones. You probably just have the black and white plans, which are fine. We can
Wasn't that image just in the presentation we saw?
It's the front cover page of it, so I can go to that.
yeah, you want to start there quickly?
Yeah.
And then go to the plans?
Yeah, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. I think that's the issue.
Okay, so that's,
That's good.
Oh, there you go.
yeah, it's just something brief. Just kind of gives a rendered overview of the site. The development parcel consisting of 10.3 acres. They're showing with the buildings and the parking and the stormwater basins. And then the dark green area to the bottom, consisting of 5.5 acres, which encompasses the wetland and the land opposite of the wetland. Again, for 5.5 acres would be the parcel donated to the town. Provides some connectivity again to existing open space parcels, presented this way to the select board. I've had discussions with the Grafton Land Trust, was very well received, so this is how we proceeded. Now I can probably go to the black and white plans, and you do have those, Katrina, you said, right?
Yeah, I just have to get down to what page it is.
If you go to the table of contents, you can click attachment C and it'll jump there.
That's right, you told me that. Hold on. My computer's just moving very slow tonight.
Technology doesn't want to cooperate today.
In this building, sometimes when it rains, it doesn't. I don't know why.
Wi-Fi's 2013, so.
That'd be the next page, Katrina.
I'm wired in.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. So where am I going?
It'd be the next page.
Attachments.
Right, so if you scroll down, click attachment B, not C. Yeah, right there. And then down your next page is the start of the site plan set.
I'm gonna be quickly at C 1.2. There you go. So this, I'll briefly talk about the existing conditions of the property. So the property is a total of 15.8 acres. You can see the delineated wetland that kind of transects the property through the middle there, from left to right, from south to north. There is also another wetland in the open space parcel being donated. It's been delineated as well. Yep, correct there to the west. The property is the location of an existing single-family dwelling. There's some history of some agriculture, some old orchards, private orchards, and some horses and a barn. I believe the house has been commissioned for demolition through the building department. There's an old nail shop along the street that burned down a number of years ago, or partially burned down, that remains, until demolition occurs. The topography rises moderately from the street from the north to the back of the property at the south. Did our best to work with that topography from a cut and fill and earthwork standpoint. Worked out reasonably well. Soil conditions are a little bit more challenging here than what we found on the Pleasant Street site. We had a lot more glacial till and a little more challenging from an infiltration standpoint from stormwater. But that being said, it worked out okay. Just a little different of stormwater kind of analysis. Okay, so moving on, Katrina, please. We go to sheet 3.0. We can talk a little bit about the layout. Perfect. So we have a single entrance off of what we're calling Old Upton Street. Comes up, it serves as a driveway, parking area on the left that services two buildings, building number 1 and building number 2. There is also an 8-bay garage here to the east that would accommodate these two buildings. exiting out of that parking area, we continue up the driveway. Along the way, there is a leasing office, associated parking. This would also be a parking area for access to the open space that we have proposed. Moving up the driveway, we have a large parking and circulation area here to the south, which accommodates and supports 4 buildings and 2 garage buildings as well. This grade was designed such that vehicles parked there would not be on a very steep slope. The rule of thumb is about 5%, so when you open your car door, it doesn't come slamming back at you and crush your leg. The grading had some challenges, but we're able to work through them pretty well. We have identified snow storage areas. There are very strategically located landscaped islands in the front of these buildings that allowed us to meet the grading that we needed to meet when you get to the handicap parking areas with the maximum of 2%. So that's something you would see on the grading sheet if you wonder why these landscape islands are situated where they are. That is why, because these buildings are stepped, and the stepping requires a slope in the sidewalk in front of the building. So the slope of the sidewalk in these locations was going to make the parking spaces too steep, so therefore we were able to design a landscape island in there to accommodate the grading. The project will be serviced by water. We extend a 12-inch main from the bottom of Pigeon Hill Road, slightly down 140, turn it on to Old Upton Street, where it will come down and service the project. The water department has requested that we extend the 12-inch water main past the project entrance as close to this intersection of 140 as we can, so that they can pick it up there in the future and bring it down towards the town line with Upton, as indicated by Mr. Williams. We will provide public sewer. This is the location of the proposed pump station. Gravity sewer throughout the project down to the pump station, and the pump station would pump the sewer up the same route that the water main will come down, of course having proper vertical and horizontal separations. And the last sewer manhole that we will tie into is also at the intersection of 140 and Pigeon Hill Road. We've discussed not all of the details of that with the appropriate departments, but enough where they understand. We will seek their comments on any specifics, just as you mentioned, Peter, with regards to force mains. So we'll get into that a little bit with them, and we look forward to their input and formal comments to the board. So we have three stormwater areas. And what I'll do, Katrina, is I'll just switch to the grading and drainage plan.
Which one's that?
Easier.
C 5.0 with 2 more sheets down.
5.0. So we have 3 stormwater areas. First one I'll mention is a subsurface under the parking lot detention system that has an overflow out across to the northeast part of the property where there's a level spreader. Level spreader means that water can collect there and then it can leave in a very slow and laminar, non-turbulent fashion. And when it leaves that level spreader, it goes down into an existing swale along the side of Upton Street. Very straightforward. Swale is adequately sized in Upton Street to handle any sort of overflow that may occur if it occurs. This underground subsurface detention system gets stormwater from this portion of the parking lot and the roof. And then we have 2 other stormwater basins here. They essentially act as one, but because of the grade change, they illustrated as 2. So stormwater from the remainder of the site is collected with catch basins, a series of manholes and pipes, and is discharged into this upper basin here. This upper basin has a sediment forebay, and then through outlet pipes, water is discharged from this upper basin to this lower basin. There's a section of this corner of the parking lot and this lower portion of the road that will be collected in catch basins and discharge into this lower basin. So with the water from the upper basin discharging into the lower basin, and then other stormwater being collected directly discharged to the lower basin, this is analyzed as such to understand and model that scenario. And then all of the stormwater, after being detained and treated, is discharged through an outlet structure to the entrance of the existing culvert under Old Upton Street, which discharges across the other side of Upton Street, and then goes wherever that, goes down towards 140, where this wetland runs to now. This wetland is a big contributor to what leads to this culvert. So we're discharging into that same location under that culvert, large capacity culvert. We provided a drainage schedule. We provided soil testing results for all the stormwater areas. We do have a couple of swales which carry stormwater because we need to capture the volume and the rate of stormwater in order to meet the pre-post development. So there's a swale that collects stormwater at the backs of these buildings and conveys it down here as such. We have a small series of runoff that'll run on the back of these buildings and make its way. The roof drains connect to the drainage system, and that stormwater makes its way in this general direction and gets captured as well. As Mr. Williams indicated, we have about 4.1 acres of impervious coverage. That puts our impervious area, our lot coverage, is about 25.8%. We are not in a zone 2 of a wellhead, municipal water, a little different than Pleasant Street. There are no sensitive environmental areas when it comes to stormwater design. However, we do meet the Grafton stormwater regulations with regards to runoff. We do treat for the nitrogen and phosphorus in our calculations. We just have to demonstrate that. One of Jeff's comments in his letters, we will do that and demonstrate that we have met that requirement. And when it comes to wastewater discharge flows, there are 274 bedrooms, so at 110 gallons per day per bedroom, that is 30,140 gallons per day if we use Title V flows, which are very conservative. More likely than not will be about 60% of that, 50 to 60% of that flow. Little debate with DEP about Title V flows versus real sewer flows, as Title V is intended for sewage disposal system, long-term operation, subsurface systems, as opposed to what actually gets generated from flushing and running sinks. But nonetheless, 30,140 for Title V gallons per day, but more likely than not, 50 to 60% of that realistic flows. When it comes to parking, we have 256 total spaces. Our traffic engineers did a parking demand analysis where they determined that 1.31 spaces would be required based on the number of bedrooms and bedroom configurations for the total unit count. We know your regulations require 2.25. We're going to take a look and see what we can do for parking. As you can see, it is a little bit tight, but I'm happy to tell you that you'll see this building style are all the same. There are 6 building styles that are all the same, and this is the larger of the 2 building styles. You may recall from the Pleasant Street site, they were smaller building styles that accommodate different bedrooms. So 4 out of these 6 large buildings will actually going to be revised to be smaller footprints, which hopefully opens up a little bit more space for us to work with on a revision. So we will look at parking spaces. We will look at getting work out of the 25-foot buffer zone to the maximum extent possible. So hope that works out well for us. Another comment which you haven't been privy to, but I want to bring it up. It came from Jeff's letter. Very observant. We have a location of a proposed dumpster in this part of the driveway. So this driveway comes up and it provides access to this large parking and circulation area. It also provides access to this parking area. At the end of this parking area, we had a proposed dumpster. Jeff suggested in his letter that we have more than that one location, and we will find another location. We have a couple of ideas already, so very observant, and we agree. So we will look to do that. You'll see that on a future revision. Anything about Jeff's letter you can think of that we need to mention?
I think you covered it.
Okay. So, it's fairly, not the most detailed, but fairly broad overview of the civil site plans. I think, covered water, covered sewer, covered parking, covered grading, stormwater, and some wetlands a little bit. And if we have any questions,
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. First comment is, I believe the agreement with the town with respect to the open space and all, you're supposed to provide a couple of parking spots to access the easements, to access the open space. I'm not thrilled with the idea that those parking spots are doubling for the leasing office as well. Basically that means during the daytime, you've got somebody working in the leasing office, they've already used up one of those spots, and if anybody comes to rent something, you use two of them. And now, there's not necessarily spots. So I would like to see a few more spots in that area, or, some other dedicated spots for access to the open space.
Okay.
To meet the requirements of the select board.
Yeah, we were looking at that today in the office, and I think we can get at least a couple more spots.
Yeah. The other thing is we got input from the public. I believe it's a neighbor, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name because I won't do it justice. But the statement is the proposed property shares an easement with my property. Can you elaborate on where this shared easement is?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks. I probably something I should have mentioned from the start. So I believe the abutter you're referring to is he had the abutter to the east, and going back to this, which unfortunately makes Katrina probably want to bring up that
Yeah, hold
rendered
on.
image again.
And Katrina, maybe if you can bring that up, and then is Steve's using his laser that the folks on the phone can't see. Maybe you can just kind of
Yep.
The laser.
try to mimic them with the mouse.
Sure, with the mouse. Yep.
Go back
Just so
to
they
the
know what
first
you're talking
page.
about.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
title.
And you might as well leave those shared until we're done with questions and comments.
And I'd like to use them for my presentation as well.
Yeah, so if you could zoom into the top left of that, Katrina, that'd probably be helpful.
Yep, I know exactly where you're.
There you go. So just at the top of Katrina's page, and more so on this page, you can see the abutter's dwelling. Their driveway currently comes through the applicant's property in an easement that they purchased. So they actually come off Old Upton Street, close to the intersection of 140, and they come up generally like this, through this driveway, and then back onto their property where their house is. The language in the easement is very clear. The grantor of the easement and their heirs and assigns have the right to relocate the driveway, as long as the purpose and function of the easement and the driveway is maintained. So what we're proposing is a slight bow in their driveway. The applicant will perform that work. And the reason we're proposing that bow is because we thought it would be beneficial for the proximity to the project, to the maximum extent, possible, that from the back corner of this garage, etc. We do have a pipe that will go under their driveway, which will allow the water to be piped to the level spreader. But as part of that work, when the pipe goes in, their driveway will be slightly curved as far away from the garage building as possible, and then tie back into their existing driveway on the applicant's property, and then they can continue up to their house. The applicant has indicated to me today that, they'll have a new section of driveway with that reconfiguration, and
You mean the abutter?
well, it's the abutter's driveway, but on the portion of it where it's going to be rebuilt and kind of bowed out away from the nearest buildings, you're gonna have a new stretch of asphalt, and you know, every time you drive over, you get this new stretch of asphalt. So it's something we probably would seal coat the whole driveway. There's a kind of uniformity to that, appearance. We have been in touch with the abutter. There is landscaping proposed strategically to hopefully benefit the abutter. We're open to changes in landscaping that they see fit. But that is the issue. I don't consider it an issue, but that's the topic when it comes to the easement and the driveway.
Okay.
I have a question.
Ms. Reed,
What's the, property that's to the bottom of like, that looks like a house sitting in that little section?
Here?
Like, yeah, right there. What is that?
That is also a single family home.
Right. So
Okay,
that
so
is,
someone's living there too.
Someone's living
yeah,
there.
yeah, that's the Gowell family. Ken Gowell, I
Yeah.
believe, is who lives there.
Okay. And is there like, there's nothing affecting their, besides just you're gonna do landscaping for them as well, but it's not affecting anything else? Okay.
Correct. No easements,
Yeah.
no encumbrances, no encroachments,
Yeah, okay.
vice versa.
All right, thank you.
other questions or comments from the board? Yes.
So the percentage of impervious, the 24%, is, I assume that includes the parcel that's being donated, right?
Yes, it does.
And similar to the other project, can you provide both sets of numbers?
Yeah, on the cover sheet we did, and I can quickly. So, the total impervious coverage of the existing with the existing parcel, land area would put us at, we're at 25.8. When just the development parcel is included in the calculation, it is 41.85. A little discrepancy in my notes versus the plan, so the total impervious coverage of the total parcel may be as high as 27.24. My meeting notes say 25.8, but we can say 27.24. If we just calculate the development parcel, it is 41.85. Roofs, pavement, roofs and pavement.
So, different question. Does the change in those building footprints, does that change the bedroom counts or anything like that?
Doesn't change the bedroom count, but it will reduce the impervious percentage slightly. A couple percent maybe.
So is that just overall smaller units, smaller?
They don't have any 3 bedrooms.
Right. So we
So
have
they're smaller
a
units.
2-bedroom and 3-bedroom building, which is the larger one that are shown on the plans. And then the other building type is 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms.
So
So
then
it's-
that would change the number of bedrooms, right?
No, because we assumed in these larger buildings for design purposes early on that this was just going to accommodate all the bedrooms that Mr. Williams has indicated in calculations, but they will not change the bedroom count.
One other question. So, kind of, it's very confusing. The Upton Street, Upton Road, Old Upton Street, Old Upton Road.
Right.
And I know that's
Right.
not necessarily your issue.
Yeah, absolutely. This came out when I met actually the chief, the police chief down at the site because we walked the site together. And actually, when Steve came, we started to say it was very confusing of all the streets, and actually he was gonna put somewhat of a motion to the boards or somewhere to actually possibly do a name change of that road, Old Upton Street. You know, obviously he was saying, well, some of the existing people might not like it for their bills and everything, but it's very, very confusing because, you know, we were even bamboozled with our plans, and he says it's on the other side of town, and very, very confusing. So he thought he might bring it up maybe to the safety board he's on, or maybe the traffic people, and try to possibly do a name change.
Yeah, we're not opposed to a name change at all.
Absolutely not, yeah.
There are a number of record plans that show this as Upton Street, Old Upton Street.
There's also Upton Road
It's
on
also
the
Upton
other
Road.
side.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
No,
I live over
it's
that
Old
way.
Upton Road on the other side.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
That's the
Upton, but
confusing
it's not
part.
just
Yeah,
street,
his-
it's also
If the
road.
damn thing's on fire and
That's exactly.
they say street or road, they go the wrong place.
That's exactly what he had. Yeah,
Yeah, that was-
he didn't obviously like that. I'm
Yeah,
sure. So
that was his point.
We ran into that on Pulte's on Milford Road. Remember, Dairy Drive was in Upton.
Yeah.
The next road down, and they wanted to name one of those roads Dairy,
Dairy Drive,
and we stopped it.
So I think there's a Misco Brook path in town. You know, this is the Misco Hill. If you look at the old USGS maps, we thought, you know, so we would suggest maybe Misco Road or something like that. But we'll run it by the chief. You'll probably get correspondence from him on this topic. The only other Misco in town is, I believe, is Misco Brook Path. I don't know where it's located.
Yeah, I've not heard of that.
I've never heard. I've heard of
Off of George
Misco
Hill.
bottling plant on
Yeah.
Follett Street, but
The Misco Trail, because I walk up there, maybe, off of George Hill, maybe.
All right,
That's it.
did Ms. Biswell, do you have your hands up, or not anymore, or?
I did. I just wanted to ask about a butter to the, I guess, west, at the bottom, basically. Were there any comments from that abutter with respect to landscaping or anything like that?
No, the only comments we got from the abutter was the one that's with the easement for the
With the
driveway,
easement.
that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or were there any discussions between the applicant and that abutter?
Through the chair, we did talk with Mr. Gowell during our public outreach meetings as part of the select board process. So he was there when we met here in town hall and kind of talked about the project, but he didn't have any specific comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams?
you had mentioned 274 bedrooms. So you take away the 152, and you got 122 that could be for kids plus. So, I mean, I don't know how many kids would be involved with a place like this, but I'm just wondering if we should consider asking for a playground, because the closest place that I know of is North Street.
Yes.
It did kind of jump out to me that there's not necessarily any sort of recreation.
I mean, with this possibility of so many kids in there,
Yeah.
and I don't know what apartment buildings produce for kids. That'd be a question maybe we could
It's-
research with the school department.
Yeah, it's
but-
it's less than you think.
Right, no, I
You
know, I know condos are the same way.
Yeah, it's quite a bit, but still, there will be some kids in here. Especially
Right, then the
with,
closest is North Street,
yeah.
which is quite a ways.
Which is quite a ways away.
No, that jumped out at me as well. Just looking at the size of it and thinking that this seems like the type of thing that should have some sort of, even if it's a flat lot, flat plot like we did down in a Hilltop, although I think they also have some recreation equipment, but but I agree. I think it's a very valid comment.
Just even a couple things.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll review. Yeah, absolutely.
And my thought would be a little bit of both, not only play equipment, but a grass area for some type of game with younger children.
Right.
Yep.
Actually, also with the butter too, with the driveway, we just recently staked our lot line. We haven't met them yet, but we staked the lot line. The purpose of the lot line was kind of identify, where the lot line is according to their house and where the existing driveway is. And we'd like to actually meet with the abutters and kind of, I actually bought some rope today, actually to lay out where the existing, the new driveway would be, and in yellow. And the purpose of also the lot line was great because it showed where we could save some mature growth. And there's a beautiful maple tree along that border that we can save. So there's somewhat of a good thing to get out there and actually stake the lot line and create a new limit of clearing and save some trees. And I'm sure Jeff might do it. I know there's some, kind of some nice trees out in the front we have to review, but we managed to do a nice still existing landscape buffer between our units and also the Butter's house, which was good to see.
So has the whole lot been staked?
Just the left lot line along the neighbor to, what is it, the west?
East.
It's pretty thick up there if you try to walk it, but you can kind of follow paths more or less up the middle and get a good feeling for looking left. I tried to look for abutters after the first house, and I wasn't about to pull my way through the brush to try to get to the lot line.
Also,
Yep,
I
that's
was
right.
looking at Travis's plans. Could we get a smaller set like those?
11 by 17?
Yeah,
I can
you can
one.
print them?
I can print them.
Okay. That way we don't have to carry these big ones to the, well, and they fit better on the desk, so.
Yeah, I can print them. I'll have them for you next meeting.
Further comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Yeomans?
I just mentioned the engineer when he talked about the flow from the bedrooms being close to 30,000 gallons a day. The estate measurement is 110 gallons per bedroom. I just make note of the memo from Paul Canoyer in the sewer department pointing out that the flow, while a developer and anyone can say that the project probably won't produce that kind of flow, but the design criteria is 110 gallons per bedroom. The sewer department, I just point out in their memo, in point 2, they say that the applicant, they point out that the connection points should be evaluated, and any changes needed in these sewer lines based on the increased flow from this project should be paid for, and the design work be done by the developer. And, they point out that the sewer lines have all been really installed with no thought in mind that a project of this size is suddenly going to be dropped into the sewer line. So I can empathize with their concern, and I just make note of the memo from Paul dated June 27th, that we incorporate that as he asked for it to be incorporated in any evaluations that we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from anyone on the board?
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
just a couple questions, if I may. The wetland delineation that's shown on the existing conditions plan, I'm sorry if I missed this during your presentation, but has that been reviewed and or approved by the Conservation Commission? And I also have a concern that the delineation seems to be incomplete. It basically ends at the private property line with the abutter, so we don't know where that wetland goes. It looks like there might be a stream. I see a box culvert notation and a head wall. And then the wetland delineation that's further west on the site doesn't close. There's a boundary at the top of that wetland area, but it just there's no delineation on the other side of it. So maybe they could elaborate on those issues.
Happy to.
Yep.
So the delineation has not been reviewed or approved by the Conservation Commission yet in any shape, way, or form, either from their consultant, because no formal filing has been made to them. We are prepared to, but just like Pleasant Street, we were seeking input and any revisions we would incorporate into a plan that would be part of the submittal to conservation, just to, you know, make the process less complicated. So, they have not approved or reviewed the, any of the wetland delineation you see. Dan is correct that the delineations that you do see do end at the property line, which is customary. I don't think private landowners like to have their property flagged for wetlands without their permission. We'd be happy to perhaps explore that or demonstrate that the wetland does not do anything different or drastically impact the subject property if it turns, for example, if that wetland to the south were to turn east and all of a sudden impose a buffer zone differently than what we're showing. I know that it doesn't, but we can demonstrate that, hopefully to everyone's satisfaction. And then the wetland to the west, we delineated only one side because early on in the process, it was not known that we would potentially donate that parcel to the town. But what we did know is that we were never going to cross that wetland, so having the other side delineated was not required. If that is required for the town to pursue acceptance of that parcel, we'll do that. Piece of cake. Delineate the other side, make it part of review and approval by conservation and their consultant. There is a stream that runs through these wetlands. That's what leads to the culvert. They are intermittent, so there is no riverfront area associated with these wetland areas. Just BVW and some bank.
So there is an intermittent stream though that runs in which direction?
It runs from south to north within the delineated wetland.
Okay, and so the stream would cross the abutter property, then enter the culvert under Old Upton Street, and then where does it go from there?
It continues out to 140, which is the current Upton Street. I have not followed it from there. I believe there's another culvert under Upton Street, which would be Route 140, but I can investigate that.
If I
How
could
do you
speak
know-
to that matter.
How do you know I'm sorry.
Dan, didn't mean to interrupt. This is Jeff Walsh, but I had the opportunity to be in town today, and I did take a look at exactly what we're speaking of. The culvert that crosses Old Upton Street, it's a small box culvert, about 2 foot by 2 foot. The water discharges, looking at the page from the right to the left, from south to north. There's an open stream that goes across that piece of land between Old Upton Street and Upton Street. The stream merges with another stream at the toe of the slope. There's a large embankment that was built up to create Upton Street. So this stream merges at the toe of the slope with another stream that's running from west to east down the hill, and those two streams pass under Upton Street in about a 48-inch diameter culvert, a very large culvert. It comes out on or near property that is either condominiums, apartment houses across Route Upton Street that gain their access from Meadowbrook, and it turns and goes around that property and then crosses Meadowbrook. So that is the stream location. I can't delineate it. Katrina, if you could follow along with what Steve's showing on the map, we can at least show, it shows up better on the map that's in the meeting room here, but there is some, I think for those viewing, you could at least show them what I was referring to.
Katrina doesn't
Yeah.
really have it.
I don't have it, it's cut
Okay.
off.
If I can take the steering wheel,
Go right ahead.
thank you.
Be my guest.
Oh my gosh, this thing's a rock.
Way to end, Mouse.
How do I drive this thing? Technology is not our side.
2017 Mouse.
I've got three buttons on mine and I'm happy. All right. For those watching on the For those watching on the screen, this is where the culvert is. It crosses under the stream. This darker color here is the stream channel, and then from here it crosses under Route 140 to about here, and then goes in easterly direction, crosses Meadowbrook, and heads down to a large wetland that eventually gets to Silver Lake.
Goes down underneath all the culverts.
All right. I mean, I do see actually on one of the plan sheets, there is a there's a couple wetland flags on the abutting property. So it looks like someone actually did go on the property and flagged it.
We did
But I
in
think
that,
it's-
in that instance, we did.
Yep. So I think it's important to make sure we have that delineation shown on all your plan sheets and most importantly, the drainage sheet, because apparently the wetland boundary is really quite close to your infiltration basin. So I know the Conservation Commission is going to want to see that and
Fine.
consider it.
Yep.
And then with respect to the stream, I mean, you mentioned that you haven't filed anything with the Conservation Commission because you wanted to get feedback on the design of the project, but you could go to the Conservation Commission with an ANRAD and request the approval of a delineation without having any details of the design of the project. And the benefit to that would be then you've got a binding determination on the delineation and the resource areas from which you could then design your project around. So a lot of real estate developers elect to go that route to at least have some certainty as to where that line is before you spend a lot of money on engineering. That if that line is not approved the way you're showing it, maybe you don't want to go off and spend a lot of money designing a project that might have to change. So I'm just raising that. I'm not saying you have to do it, but that's something that you might want to consider. And then with respect to the stream itself, how do you know it's intermittent? Did you do a stream stats analysis or what?
Yes, yeah, we did. Didn't have to shit. First of all, it's on the US. The first test under the Wetlands Protection Act is what the USGS maps show. The second test after that, if it's a thin blue line, it's intermittent. However, we always like to confirm through stream stats that is the case, that the tributary area does not meet the criteria for perennial status, which it does not. Happy to share that if necessary. And we do sometimes do ANRADs when things are a little more complicated than this site. But I understand your point. Just pretty confident in what's going on out here. So in this case, we did not. But we could also retain the services of Ecotech again, like we did on Pleasant Street, to help the ZBA understand that if that's something of interest.
Well, the reason I raise it, Steve, is that you are showing grading right up to the 25-foot no touch zone. So there isn't really any margin for error here. And I think it would be helpful to have that delineation signed off on earlier in the process than normal, I think. And is that stream stats, is the printout from the stream stats run, is that in your stormwater report, or is that something
No.
you would
Yeah,
share
just
with us?
something we did in our due diligence.
I'm sorry, is that printout available? Is it in the stormwater report?
It is not in the stormwater report. We just performed it as part of our due diligence of the site development. It's something I can provide as a supplement, though.
Yeah, it'd be great. If you could file that with the board tomorrow, that'd be great. And I think that was all I had on the wetland issues. Let me just check my notes. Oh, on the other side, Steve, on the south side of the property.
Yep.
Where do the wetlands go over there? Is that what? Are there any other resource areas on that side, like a pond or anything, or is it just BVW?
Yeah, just BVW. There's an intermittent stream that runs in that BVW. And I think you mean west, but you said south because it's the bottom of the page. Is that why?
No, I meant west. I mean, I meant south.
I think he's talking about the right hand
The
of the page.
BVW ends at the property line. We don't know what's on the other side of that
Yeah,
line.
that topography continues to climb. Actually, the railroad is there. So there's, I would imagine there may be some sort of culverts under the railroad that allow water to pass under the railroad instead of over the tracks. But there's no pond within close proximity. It's just runoff from topographic conditions that ultimately, feed this wetland.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Further questions or comments from the board? Then at this point, I'd turn it over to Mr. Walsh for his comments.
Thank you. Again, Jeff Walsh, Graves Engineering.
Do you want me to pull up his memo?
It's up to Jeff.
Pull up
Pull it up, your memo?
my memo. Probably not. It wouldn't,
Okay.
the boards would be in a tough position. I think I'd rather just talk through a few points.
Okay.
The applicant's team, I trust, have seen it. Quite frankly, it's a short letter, 6 pages long, 2.5 or 1.5 pages of photographs. I've included photographs this time. Cause it's gonna help, when the board sees the letter to understand the points on a couple things we're gonna speak of. Quite frankly, the engineering, the thought that went into this is very thorough, very thorough. But nevertheless, there's a few things I want the board to be aware of, because as we know, every project is different. Every project's got different concerns, different issues, and so on and so forth. Here, one of the first things, and this is required under the ZBA's 40B rules and regulations, is for existing mature trees over a certain diameter to be shown on the plans, and there are a number of existing mature trees out on the site. Most important, or what jumped out at me, is a number of larger trees out at the front of the site, between Old Upton Street and probably the barns, if you will, that are behind the old farmhouse. At first, you can't see them because of all the other trees that have grown up around them over the years, but I shared put a couple of photos in my letter, one of either a red maple or a beech, and I'm embarrassed to say I couldn't tell the difference between the two because I looked at them later on. Only on the photo, the shape of it when I was at the site jumped out at me as a younger beech that I've seen in another town is about 5 foot in diameter. And the other one is a large oak that's about 48 inches around, and both, those weren't the only two, but those are two good examples that jumped out at me, when I was in and around the site. And then later when I was up on the site, probably in somewhere around about the middle of the parking area, more or less, and I turned back and looked toward the farmhouse down below, you see the whole large canopy. And it just made me think that, okay, some more thought besides what's been shared with the board so far needs to go into, these are the trees we found, these are the trees that look healthy, might be potentially suitable for saving, and then what efforts were made to try to save them or just couldn't completely work around them, couldn't work with them whatsoever. Quite frankly, I'd love to see some of those incorporated into this if it's doable. So that's one of them. Another comment, this pertains to the Grafton Wetland Bylaw regulations. They are proposing work with those, can I have the steering wheel again, please?
Sure thing.
And working with the roller knob. Uh-oh, can you get me to the bottom of the page? Thank you. All right, working in, these are the two open basins. This work here, the grading encroaches within the 25-foot no disturb to the point where it's right up against the wetland is currently delineated. This area has a few mature trees and the undergrowth is very tall and it creates a very thick canopy that shades this buffer zone area. There's a photo in my letter of this as well. To me, I'm an engineer, Ecotech could speak more to the value of this buffer zone, but, I also serve on a conservation commission and having sat through enough of these types of meetings. To me, this buffer zone has value as a buffer zone. I'm not speaking as a resource area, but it does support, one, the shading of the stream, which is important for keeping the temperature down and the dissolved oxygen level up in the stream. And also it speaks to habitat, nearby upland habitat for the species. And I think this buffer zone is worthy of not the ZBA not giving on the 25-foot no disturb in this area. That's my opinion. And again, I've never really, I don't speak too forcefully at these meetings, but this is a point that I'm strong about. Also, the landscaping plan, sheet L1 that shows the north end, does not propose any visual landscape buffering but in this area along these two berms to buffer the abutter to the west here. I do not encourage trees to be planted on fill berms for stormwater basins because root growth in berms can be problems over time with either trees toppling over and compromising the integrity of the berm or water migration around here. However, I think you might be looking at some cut slopes here. So that's a possibility if they are cut slopes, because a fallen tree is not going to compromise a fill berm if it's a cut slope. So again, the 25-foot buffer, sorry guys, but I got a strong opinion of that one, but it's my opinion.
Yeah, we think we can make something work.
Can I ask a question before you move? So, did I misunderstand? I thought the buffer that you were, or the buffer that you were talking about doesn't that provide the in place of landscaping between that and the abutter?
It would to some extent, but there's not a lot of undergrowth. All the leaf canopy is high.
Gotcha.
And so maybe some augmentation of what's in the 25-foot buffer with some other type of lower growing types of shrubbery might help the cause for the abutter. Okay. Another point had to do with the hydrology. The hydrology again was very thorough. One of my comments, there were two analysis points for the Trina, could you?
Where do you want to go?
I want to scroll so I get all the frontage. And a little bit down. Thank you. There were two analysis points. One is the analysis, when I talk of analysis points where the hydrology model evaluates pre-development versus post-development peak rates of runoff from the site. And one of the areas started at the westernmost property line and ran along all the frontage up to about Upton Street. And then there was a little bit more, the second analysis point was up here that flows to Upton Street. I agree that the analysis point for Upton Street is in order. I was concerned about the southern one and whether or not the stream needs to be separated from the frontage along Old Upton Street, because I was concerned whether the stream and the runoff that comes to Old Upton Street, whether it immediately goes to the same location or whether it goes to two different locations, and eventually it's going to come together either at Silver Lake or the Atlantic Ocean, probably Silver Lake, but nevertheless, the point is that the runoff to the culvert is in fact an analysis point in and of itself, because the runoff, after I confirmed today, does go westerly across that triangular piece of land in a brook, across Route 140, and continues on in another stream, whereas the runoff that comes to Old Upton Street goes easterly and does get into that drainage swale that Mr. O'Connell spoke of earlier that runs along Upton Street east of this intersection. So the water goes two different directions, and it's worthy of two different evaluations. Lastly, and then I got a couple of cleanup items I'm embarrassed to say. Lastly, number 26, parking. A waiver was requested, and when I looked at the waiver request, I said, "Oh, where's the argument for what to do? Why they're proposing this?" I did find it in the analysis in the larger application package. It was thought out. It was looked at, but I take issue with two things with the traffic engineer. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'll go at it with this one, and if you want to bring on the other traffic engineer, I'd be glad to. One, they looked at land use code, I believe it's 200 for a low-rise building, and it should be land use code 220, I believe. But that land use code is for 1- and 2-story buildings. It needs to have this unit plus 3 others, or at least 4 units, and it needs to be 1 or 2 floors of residence. And then they have another land use code 221 that is 4 or more dwelling units, just like the other land use code, but this range is from 3 to 10 floors of residence. The buildings proposed, are 3 or 3 and 4, depending on whether they're stepped and they have a walkout or not. So I really think the other land use code should be used. It's not gonna make a big difference. The numbers are different. So that's one point. The other point is the traffic engineer spoke to the average parking demand, the average need of parking. What that says to me is half the time there's gonna be a little less demand, half the time there's gonna be a little more. The traffic, the parking generation information available in that document does speak to an 85th percentile. That means 85% of the time, the demand will be this or less. And I think that's what needs to be looked at if we're gonna cite the ITE parking generation table. 85th percentile, just like when we look at measured vehicle speeds during a traffic review, we don't talk about the posted speed or the average speed, we talk about the 85th percentile.
So where does their 150 or whatever it is, however many, I can't remember, where does that line up?
I think they're still all right,
Okay,
but we should go down the path using this information in case future revisions bring us to a
Okay.
problem area.
got it.
It's probably somewhere around the 1.6. I don't think it gets as high as 1.7 at the 85th percentile, but it's not up to the 2.25. And again, that's parking demand. If somebody pulls into here and there's one parking spot available and their apartment is to the left and they've got to go down to the other end to the
Right.
right, there should be some extra.
Agreed.
But I want to make sure that we're using the proper baseline as we go into these discussions.
Yeah, you know, it's to that point, I don't have numbers, but it feels like that would be one of the lower numbers that this board has approved with the 1.5. It seems low for what we typically approve.
Agreed. My recollection, I'd have to go back and look at the other projects. They're probably getting pretty close to the 2
Absolutely.
per dwelling unit.
That's my recollection as well.
Those are the comments that I wanted to bring to the board's attention, and the letter, again, it's got a few photos, and I'd encourage you to take a look at the trees and the buffer zone. Watch out for the poison ivy. You can kind of go around, instead of right in from Old Upton Street, you can kind of go around, and once you get into there, you can look back toward Old Upton Street and get a better look at what's going on there. In my comment about the traffic, I had an error that spoke that 50% of the time the average parking demand will be exceeded. No, the average parking supply will be exceeded. So there's a typo in my letter. And then lastly, one thing I had commented on, but I found the information was soil testing information. There was soil testing done down at the open basins. The applicant's team will need to do soil testing up at the subsurface infiltration system. No soil testing was done there. Again, glacial tills, they can be sandy, they can be hard packed. I know up on Sibley Street, having done a few jobs up there, yeah, they're hard packed up on Sibley Street, but that is higher up on the hill and a little farther to the southwest. So these soils being near the stream and so forth, I can appreciate they might be on the sandier side than Sibley Street. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? Applicant, do you have anything else to present?
I think, and this is something with the traffic engineer, when we get to that part of the meeting process,
Yep.
we'll address. I think there was a recent change in the land use codes. I think there's a new addition to ASHTO. It's not my cup of tea, per se, but I remember we had this conversation with GPI, who's the traffic consultant, who had brought us up to speed, and they revised their traffic study from a draft to the final version because the old 221, the low rise definition changed. So 221 to 220. Don't quote me on that, but it may not be a mistake, but it may just be an update that threaded the needle in this process.
Okay.
But and we'll get into that for sure. But I think the point is that we want to provide enough parking for the residents.
Yep.
You know, the applicant's going to own this property. We don't want there to be a parking issue. We'll work through those.
Yep. Mr. Hill?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can shed some light on this because I actually just took a deposition of a traffic engineer in a different case. So I actually know what these land use codes are talking about. And there's actually a discrepancy between the land use codes for the parking generation manual and the trip generation manual, and they're two different purposes. And everyone is right. The codes have changed and the floors have changed. But if the applicant is using the low-rise building code for the parking estimates, that's actually more conservative because typically lower density projects have a higher parking demand than higher density projects. So going to a higher code would probably be less conservative. So from my perspective, it's probably okay if we want to be conservative to let them just use the lower code, even if that's technically not accurate under the current manual.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll double check those numbers. They were pretty close. I have the same document that was cited in the traffic analysis, well, the parking analysis. Again, I recall the taller buildings being maybe a little bit higher by about 0.1 parking spaces per dwelling unit. But again, I'll get my facts straight. But more importantly, I think either way, the project as we know it now is all right as far as they're not exceeding, but I want to make sure there's plenty of quote unquote extra parking spaces so that those, you know, yeah. Otherwise people, if they got to walk a long distance, they're going to park on the curb or something like that.
Right, right.
And what is the requirement? Is it 2.25?
2.25.
Per dwelling unit in the multifamily residential zoning district, which we're applying to this because that's what it looks like, even though that use isn't allowed in this zoning district.
All right, anyone else? So, is anyone,
Is there someone in the chat?
yeah, so is it a,
Oh, one was Dan that he had to step away for a minute, and the other one is Anne Marie Foley wants a copy of their presentation,
okay,
which
all right.
you can just.
Thank you.
I might just
Yeah.
try and download it and save it
That's fine.
before we leave tonight.
Yeah.
Are you gonna haul the snow away?
When we have to, when the storage areas are about to be exceeded.
You have storage areas?
Yep,
Okay.
they're illustrated on the layout, layout materials.
Not that we get the snow we used to get, but
You just jinxed us.
Yeah, we're due, Peter. Thanks a
Realize
lot. But we know you plow snow, so we know you. do
no,
that.
not anymore. Not anymore. Now it's a bother. I hate to, after
right.
50 years, it's a bother.
All right, I just want to acknowledge, I think we received, input from five sets of input. One from, Paul Canoyer representing, the sewer department. One from citizen, Nana Akia, 126
the
Upton
lobby.
Street. Huh?
She's in the,
Audience.
she's here.
I'm sorry if I brutalized your name.
You did.
Doesn't accept your-
I'm really, I don't mean to disrespect anyone in that manner. So we got that input, Conservation Commission, Fire Department, and, Planning Department. So, I just want to acknowledge, receipt of all that input. I believe that's it, right, Katrina?
That is it.
Okay. Obviously, we have Jeff's, input pending. Does anyone in the audience want to say anything? I'll open it to public input at this point.
Colleen Roy, 53 Elmwood Street. In the presentation earlier, you said that this project would extend Safe Harbor for 2 years. Is that old information because we're no longer in Safe Harbor? And does anybody know if this plus 59 Pleasant Street will get us in Safe Harbor?
Right, you're correct. That was the point that I was meaning to say. It will bring the town into Safe Harbor for 2 or more years with your yearly production goal.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, nothing on the, oh,
She's got her hand up.
who had her hand up? Oh, here you go. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Nana Echa, 126 Upton Street. Is this gonna be the last meeting?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bill McAllister, for bringing my one of my concerns out this evening. It was about the easement and when, excuse me, sir, what's your name?
Steve.
Yeah, when Steve was making his presentation.
Get closer to the microphone because we can't.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
that's okay. It's just for the video.
When Steve was making his presentation, if I quite understood him well, he made a statement to some effect that the document as pertaining to the easement is very clear, and then it's like they can easily move it. I'm yet to speak to my attorney as regards to that, so like he can explain further to me in a layman's language. I already had the opportunity to meet with is it Clayton?
Yep.
And Chad?
Yep. Right.
Yeah. And as of now, with the proposed I mean with their plan, they're trying to move the driveway. The current driveway will be moved. That is what I understand. And coming from my house, when you're driving, there is a slope. And with what I'm foreseeing, is going to cause, it's like a safety issue to me. If they move the current driveway, as it stands right now, to the new one that they're planning to do, is going to cause a safety issue to me, especially during the winter. Because if I'm right, there was a reason why that driveway was made. I mean, originally, there was, if civil engineers were on site, there must be a reason why the driveway was made that way. But right now, from what they are proposing, they're trying to move it. Yeah. So if that can be considered too. Thank you very much.
So, you know, this process will go on for probably a number of months. And I would encourage you to work with the applicant. And you also mentioned your attorney to understand that easement. You know, they're making statements about the easement. I think that you probably want to make sure that you're comfortable with what they're saying, and probably an attorney might be a really good idea. But I would encourage you to work with the applicant. I think it's going to be important to this board that what they propose to do, you're okay with. I'm not saying that, you know, our jurisdiction, I'm not so sure how far it extends. I can't promise you that we can necessarily do anything, but it's going to be important. And, you know, I'm maybe speaking more to the applicant right now than you, ma'am, but, you know, it's important that you're, as the neighbor, going to be okay with what they're proposing. So I would encourage you to keep talking to them and working with them. That goes both ways. Mr. Waller.
And I know Chad mentioned laying out the proposed driveway with rope and marking it. I'd be interested to see pictures of that and just see what the change was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can document that and provide it to the board.
Yeah, she was nice enough. She actually recommended who her attorney was, and we put together a little snapshot to him and emailed it and CC'd the butter. So we're all on the same page right now. And I went ahead and staked the lot line, and I'm already pre-guessing things. And like I said about that big maple tree, there's certain things she might not know that I can do and move stuff and do things. So that's in the works. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Very good. Anyone else? All right. Mr. Hill, you have your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just forgot to ask a question about the open space parcel. I see that there's parking next to the leasing office, but the open space parcel, the upland area is inaccessible unless someone were to build a bridge over the wetland. There's wetlands on both sides, so I'm just, I just wanted to point out the fact that a donation of land is always welcome, but that the upland that's over there is really not all that valuable because no one could really access it or use it for anything. And if the intent is for that to be an open space parcel with trails that people can walk on, I don't know how they would get to it without crossing the wetland. And I don't think the Conservation Commission wants there to be a path across the wetland that's not, unless that's going to get approved by the commission, and they'd probably require some kind of elaborate crossing. So I don't know if the applicant wants to address that point tonight, but it's just an observation I was making as I was seeing the plan.
It's a good question, Dan.
I mean, there are parts of that wetland that I would consider accessible, but, you know, perhaps maybe not as desirable, you know, because there are narrow, even though the wetland may measure 20 feet in stretches, the stream is 1 foot. So we'll talk about it and see, you know, what makes sense, what's feasible, you know, whether it's something we want to make as part of this filing with the Conservation Commission. I've seen things from footbridges to, you know, obviously we're not talking about any sort of driveway for vehicular access, I think, but there are existing trails in that open space
So
parcel.
I was just gonna ask that. I'm not familiar with that space. I've never walked around there.
So,
And I guess there actually is land trust land bordering this.
Correct.
yeah.
So-
So there is a big network of trails back in that area
Yeah.
that connects to the Anderson Crozier Woods. I've actually ridden my mountain bike back in there, and from the train tracks, it kind of falls into that parcel from there. So it kind of tees into this larger network of trails. I think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 80 acres of private and publicly owned open space back there. So there are access points kind of around the neighborhood that you can get to. You know, I think as Steve said, there are some points that might cross one of those small streams.
I think I know what I may be doing this weekend.
Hopefully we get out of the heat wave.
Where is the land trust land?
Had a nice map with the select board process.
Could you pull up GIS, Katrina?
Give me a
That's
sec.
probably the best way to look at it.
Because right above it is Pease's land,
Right.
correct?
Christine, right?
Yep, exactly.
Christie.
Christie.
Yeah, Christie, yeah.
So the land trust land must be abut that parcel that you're gonna basically give away.
Well, that's what they say, is that this parcel abuts land trust land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not its entirety, but I believe there's a connection here. I think this is Mr. Ellis.
Right.
I think this is a stone wall, or generally a stone wall, and
Oh, Ellis comes down that far?
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And where are the railroad tracks? They're further
Right here.
further to the right off the.
Those are the railroad tracks right here.
Oh.
They go right just like that.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
They go right there.
We'll absolutely, review the whole area, and just in case if we're missing any existing trails to the south or anything like that, so we could link, a walking path similar to like Pleasant Street to get to a certain area, or if it's avoiding the wetlands or anything like that.
So is the thinking that the parcel you had when you clicked on it, it came up with a number 3 on it?
Yeah, so that's land trust.
So this is the land trust right
That's
here.
land trust.
That's land trust. That's what I was clicking on, because you can see right here. It says Grafton Land Trust.
So who's in between?
Right
So
here.
it actually
That's
doesn't
Chris.
connect.
No,
That's
well,
Pease.
that's Christie Pease?
Yep.
Right.
And then this is
Roger Ellis.
Roger Ellis, okay.
And this one is Christie Pease too. So Christie Pease owns this one, and this one is split by the railroad
Oh,
tracks.
it's split by the railroad.
Yep. And then this is the land trust, which goes all the way.
But they don't connect to the green.
They actually
There's a
don't.
space in between.
Yeah.
Right. So my recollection, and I don't want to claim to know relationships, but I thought Miss Pease was tied into the land trust.
I know she sold some land up there years ago, but they should have changed that assessors map by now.
They would have, it gets updated once a year.
Yeah, but that was like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I know they're working on updating it more often.
And I don't know exactly where it was. I know it was up in that area someplace, but
Yeah, we have a map we put together, so we can share that.
And were you planning on adding some trails to tie in? Is that part of your plan?
We'll definitely take a look to see if there's any possible connection, or maybe there's an area in the future if somebody donates a parcel where they could interconnect.
Yeah.
But it's not on your plans to do any extra trails?
Not right now, but we'll
Right.
take a peek
There's
at
a
it.
number of existing trails, so I'm not sure it's necessary, but we can,
But
Like
like
how
Mr.
to
Hill's
tie your
comment,
property in?
yes, we'll
jumping-
provide those trailhead locations.
Yeah.
jumping over wetlands, or sometimes you walk through wetlands, unfortunately, through other Grafton Land Trust trails, but, you
Yeah.
know, we'll try to look at
A
it
lot, yeah.
seriously and try to
Yeah.
see where the best opportunity might be.
Yeah,
To
okay.
do something.
It looks like they need a tunnel under the railroad, but have a good luck with that one.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah,
you
mess
can
with the
negotiate with
railroad.
Mr.
That was a couple, that was a couple comments on that one.
All right.
There are some of the
It, so
tracks between those.
looking at Trail Forks, which is like a
Yep.
online GIS
Yeah.
map
Oh,
of
yeah.
trails, there's a trail called Christie's Knoll that basically kind of runs almost from right below where the Gowell residence is through our parcel and then connecting to the railroad tracks and then her remaining land on the other side.
I've walked that parcel, that trail.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
I don't know if it's out of order, not in the sense of conduct, but in the order of business. Do we
Maybe
want to
conduct too,
talk
but-
about retaining a traffic peer reviewer
Yeah, so,
early in the process here?
Before we get to that, to Mr. Hill, Dan, I rely on you to go through, a lot of like the front matter in the application as far as control of the land and all that sort of stuff. If you had a chance to do that, is there any deficiencies that we need to be aware of in the application, or are we all set there? Or have you not had a chance to go through it?
I haven't had a chance to go through it in depth. I skimmed it. There's a deed to the applicant for $500,000, so site control doesn't seem to be an issue. Project eligibility is not an issue. They have lip approval.
Yep.
So I don't see any glaring jurisdictional issues. I think it's going to be mostly substantive. I think we've got some wetland and drainage and maybe some trail and open space recreational issues. I think it's going to be more substance than it is
Yep.
jurisdictional.
So at this point, I think it would make sense to get our traffic review, peer review, and you've got a traffic study that's ready to be reviewed, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think it would be good to get him engaged. I would think we use the same guy we use for Pleasant Street. I already kind of tipped him off that this is coming and try and keep some space open on his calendar. I think I'd like to get that done. If we can get Ecotech to do a similar review, I think that would be appropriate. And it seems to me we should get both of these things going now. Let's meet again in 4 weeks and hopefully we've got some more things. We can also at that point go through Jeff's letter. We will have had a chance to review Jeff's letter. You guys will have had a chance to respond to some of it.
Yes.
And obviously respond to some of the things we've got here. But
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Dan.
yeah, just on the issue of the wetland delineation, I don't know how you feel about asking the applicant to file an ANRAD with the Conservation Commission. You heard Jeff Walsh this evening speak to the importance of the buffer zone and their requested waivers, the work that's right up against the 25-foot no-touch zone. If there's any problem with the delineation, that's going to affect the design of the project. And until they file an ANRAD, Arthur Allen is not going to review the delineation because it's too big of a scope of a project for him to do as peer review. So I think it would be very valuable to our review of this application to have that delineation really reviewed professionally through an ANRAD process.
I don't know why it would be too big for Art Allen to review as part of a peer review. Not that big.
That's not his job. His job, as part of a zoning board peer review, his job is to look at the waiver requests and general performance standards. It's not to review a delineation. That's a specific process under the Wetland Protection Act where you file an ANRAD application, you file the filing fee, and that goes to that. It's a different exercise.
Yeah, I understand. I know the process. If it was in his scope under the zoning board, I don't know why it could be, but something we'll contemplate, I guess.
But it's also not the zoning board's jurisdiction. An ANRAD the approval of a wetland delineation is only within the Conservation Commission's purview. The zoning board, it really belongs in the Conservation Commission's department, not the zoning board's.
Okay. Well, he reviewed the wetland delineation on Pleasant Street under the zoning board process. That's all. That's what I recall.
Yeah, but I think on
I
Pleasant
beg to
Street, you
differ.
had more room to maneuver. Here, you've got, really, you're right up against a 25-foot line along that entire boundary. To me, that's kind of concerning, especially where you have the infiltration system right up against it, and you're discharging runoff into essentially a direct connection into the culvert. I think having that line firmly established is very important in the zoning board's review. That's just my personal opinion.
If I could, just to try to share with the zoning board my understanding of what transpired on Pleasant Street. Yes, Art Allen of Ecotech is the peer reviewer for the Conservation Commission on Conservation Commission matters. For that particular 40B, the Commons of Pleasant, Pleasant Street, whatever the project is, Art Allen was brought in specifically to this board to opine on some matters with respect to work in the buffer zone. And my understanding is not to peer review delineation of the resource areas. He may have done the same thing. He may have peer reviewed the application for the Conservation Commission to confirm the delineation. But my understanding is he did not confirm the delineation on behalf of the ZBA. Again, he was brought in by the ZBA just to look at matters associated with work in the buffer zone. And I understand that, to Dan's point, that's what Art Allen and Ecotech would be called upon by the Zoning Board of Appeals to opine on work within the buffer zone. But yet Art, under his normal duties to the Conservation Commission, may be called upon later when a filing is made to the commission to confirm delineation of the resource areas.
So, our council, I don't know the conservation issues very well. And our council's advising one thing. I mean, is that not something you want to do, or?
NRED's a straightforward process. We'll probably just do it. No problem. I mean, we don't want to we don't want to leave any doubt on the table in the process here when
Something you gotta do
there shouldn't
eventually.
be.
Something you gotta do eventually, right?
It'd be that or an NOI. It can be confirmed through the NOI process, but an NRAD is an isolated process to confirm delineation.
Okay.
I think we've got a pretty good jump start on this project already for the first night, because
Yeah.
we've spent the last year and a half working on this, so
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with
Yeah,
that.
no problem.
Okay.
Do you remember Creepy Hill condos? We were in it 6 months to 9 months.
Peter,
Found out.
closer to the mic.
We found out the conservation stuff that the engineer designed was wrong. We had to stop 2.5 years for a 40B. We had to stop, redesign, start over again. And I'm not saying that's happening here, but
I've come across those types of engineers myself, unfortunately.
sometimes
So is
it's
Jeff.
better to be a little
No, I,
cautious.
I,
Yep.
not disagreeing at all.
Yep. We don't want to.
All right. So, I think we're looking probably at like 4 months, 4 months. 4 weeks. I don't know. And I'm just pulling that out of the sky. It just seems like a decent number.
So 4 weeks is the 24th, and we already have one meeting on the 17th. We have Pleasant Street on the 17th and the 48 case of 8 Second Street.
Look at my calendar.
Katrina, could
No,
you say those
24.
dates again, please?
The 24th, we already have a meeting scheduled for the 17th. We have Pleasant Street continued till the 17th.
Yeah, 24th, I'm not around, and not available to zoom in from somewhere.
The 31st,
31st?
31st is good with me.
So, I mean, if I don't know how quickly you can get the NRAD done so that then we get Ecotech engaged, but if we can get all that done before the 31st, that'd be great.
I would think so.
31st looking all right for everybody?
yeah.
All right, so
I'm not available, Mr. Chairman, for what that's worth, but
it's worth a lot, Dan.
Yeah, a lot. Well, what about the 23rd or the 30th if you want to move it to a Wednesday? I mean, we have done that.
Well, we're getting out there a ways. Dan, is it that week, like the 30th? Are you available? Will Wednesday the 30th work, or are you like that whole week?
It is my vacation week.
Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah.
I could do the 23rd.
Wednesday's better than Thursday nights, but
Do
But
we,
it's vacation.
Yeah, what about
do
the
we want to
23rd?
pull it into the 23rd? Do Wednesday, Thursday? What the heck?
I can't do it on the 23rd.
Wait, when?
No, we have the 17th.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't do the 23rd either. 16th. So we're already on the 17th. Do we want to do 16 and 17?
I can't do the 16th.
It's summer.
It's the end of summer. That's the problem.
Dan, do you have a colleague available to just kind of make sure we don't get in trouble on the 31st? Not really.
Yeah, I could ask.
Why don't we go for the 31st? And we just have to try and make sure we don't. And even if you can't, I mean, I think stuff that we're going to look at is fairly straightforward. We're going to have peer reviews and professionals in the room. Let's go for the 31st. Are you comfortable with us doing that, Dan?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, let's go for the 31st. So, all right. So the Q&A chat that I see down there, that we've already reviewed those.
Yeah,
They're all done.
Yep.
None of the participants have their hands raised.
The attendees, nope.
All right. Anyone else want to say anything? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. Is the ZBA gonna be engaging, Art Allen for buffer zone work? And if so, should I forward my letter to him?
Well, I guess my thinking is that we're going to have him do exactly what he did for Pleasant Street,
Okay.
which would be buffer zone.
Buffer
work.
zone.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. What I'll do is I'll forward my letter to him and CC Katrina, so she's,
Yep.
just to save the hassle.
Okay.
Yep.
Because sometimes he and I have technical discussion about different projects when we're working on the same project. Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, has the applicant consented to those two peer reviewers being retained?
I think I've seen some nodding.
We can on the record consent, yes.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yep, and if
Thank you.
you need to vote, feel free to vote, but you have our consent.
I think generally, documenting that you've consented has been okay.
Okay.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion to continue. I don't even.
Case 898.
Case 898. Entertain a motion to continue case number 898 to August 31st at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. So we got to do this by a roll call vote. Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Mr. Waller,
Yes.
Vice Chairman votes yes. We'll see you all on the 31st.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll turn the meeting back over to Mr. Waller.
Oh, do you want your flash drive back?
Yeah.
Copy what you need.
All right, hold on. Let me.
Yeah, take whatever files you need.
Yep, hold on.
And this is for the 17th, this 48?
Yes, that is for the 17th. Yep.
Please save the minutes for the 17th.
Whatever you want to do, that's
I haven't looked at any minutes.
fine with me.
All right.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Do a roll call vote. Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Ms. Bizwas.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we're adjourned.
So our next, just one quick question. So our next hearing date is August 17th for
Yes.
Pleasant Street, and then the 31st for this one.
Yes.
And there's a 40A on the 17th.
Which I will mail that out to you, Matali. The
Thank
48
you.
packet.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.